Hello gamers and welcome to another YouTube video. Today it is going to be on the BZT from the Christmas loot boxes, and I would like to start this with already saying that in no matter the circumstances, should you ever buy boxes to get a specific vehicle, I am showcasing these tanks because they're new. People would like to see them as well, but also shows you what you have to watch out for when you're playing against them. But do not buy boxes for specific tanks. If you are investing in Christmas boxes, you should be investing in it for the gold more than anything else. I feel like that was an important note to have at the beginning of the video as well. I hope you guys enjoy, and let me know what you think down below. All right, the best possible comparison, in my opinion, for this tank would be the 60p, in my opinion. Now, when we configure it fully, you'll see a funny aspect, and I completely agree that the 60p needed to be nerfed for what it was. Right, I really do believe that it deserved the nerf it was getting. But in terms of alpha, of course, the BZT wins. In terms of penetration, the BZT wins. In terms of DPM, the BZT wins again. And that's the funny part, where the BZT has 0.4 seconds reload more than the 60p, but gets an additional 101 alpha if you have ammo tuning, of course. Otherwise, it's just 100, which kind of makes for a funny situation, of course, because when we're just like kind of scrolling through this, right? This hull armor and third armor, it takes the most armored aspect. It's not really that that relevant. I'd say that the 60p turret is better than the BZT turret because the BZT has that double cupola where the 60p doesn't. But you see a funny little thing where the 60p honestly doesn't really win against this, you know, in that regard. So like going blow for blow and stat for stat, you could kind of say that the 60p is worse than the BZT, at least in that regard, the nerfed 60p. Which kind of lets us wonder if this 3-second cutoff from reload wasn't a little bit too much when you compare it to like the 60p, because like I said, you know, 0.4 seconds longer for 100 plus alpha is it's kind of funny, right? Taking that into consideration. Don't want to go too much over the stats, because the thing where the BZT does lose heavily, of course, well, heavily, where it does lose quite significantly is, of course, in the department of speed and HP, right? Because you kind of want to play turbo on the BZT, like you saw me having that equipped, which leads you to having 31 top speed with HP, where the 60p has 40 with just, you know, HP. And of course, then looking at it, if you use turbo, you're down 500 HP. If you use HP, you're still down 240 HP. So in that regard, the 60p, more survivability, which is of course impactful as well, because the higher the HP, the more shots you survive, the more damage you do, right? Makes sense, right? Welcome to the BZT-70, one of the 2 tier 10s in the loot boxes, right? The Christmas loot boxes. And I'm not here to answer the question, is it worth it to buy loot boxes for this tank? Because buying loot boxes for specific tanks is a very non-intelligent, aka stupid thing to do. I'm just here to discuss like how good this is, and then compare it to like previous tier 10s we had in the boxes potentially, and just talk about the general gameplay on this. So let's start it off first. This is an 850 alpha heavy tank, which means that it has a very high alpha, 330 millimeters of penetration, with like ammo tuning that's like 335, 336, I think, of actual penetration. Main thing about this one, of course, the AP as well, 256, and then last but not least, the HE 1200 alpha with 90 millimeters of pen. I already talked about how I don't like high pen alpha for these kind of guns on the Type 5, so I'm definitely not liking it on the BZT either, for that matter. To be honest, I'm not a fan of that. And this is the pre-buffed version as well, because I wanted to show you what it looks like pre-buff, and then I also have a little bit of gameplay after the buff as well. This tank, I've played it a decent amount now. I'm gonna be honest, it didn't really tickle my pickle too much. And the reason for that is the humongous size of this vehicle. I mean, it's really, really, really big. Together with like its lackluster mobility, makes it for a very uncomfortable tank to play. It's like I don't know. It's just really weird to play this vehicle, to be honest, for me. But when it comes purely, that's greedy there, trying to trade, trying to hit him with HE, you know, a little bit of greed. But yeah, this tank, it's not very fun to play, in my opinion. And that kind of goes for every single tank in the boxes, but we'll get about that when we get to those tanks. If it's purely a trading fight, like if you're trading, that was also a terrible shot by me. Let's just, you know, forget that happened. But if it's purely trading, 1-for-1 is going to beat every tank it plays against, basically. At least, you know, in heavy tanks. You're always going to be out-trading people. And that's like the selling point, I guess, is the high alpha of this vehicle. And the second thing to add on top of that alpha, it actually gets humongous module damage. Actually, it has more module damage than a Yak Panzer because it's a bigger caliber gun, right? Which really is going to cause a lot of AMMORACK fires and all of this other stuff from happening as well. I played it a bunch and I don't think I've ever AMMORACKed anything just as much as I have done with that one. I'm not trying to convince you to get it, I'm just saying how it is. Because of that high module damage, it's very likely to insta-rack, to set that's unlucky, to set people on fire. So when you're playing against this tank in a lowly armored module tank like a 430U, a VZ55, I mean even an E5 for example, mouse fuel tanks, you should expect to be getting kind of clapped in that regard onto those spots. Because like I said, I don't think I've ever had that many AMMORACKs with anything in such a short period of time, which of course, you know, adds up to the capabilities of the tank, because it will get extra damage out of those module hits. But like at the same time, I talked about this on stream already, and if I never played this tank again after this video, I don't feel like I would really be missing out on much. Like the general gameplay of this tank is kind of resident sleeper from my perspective, because it's just a little bit too monotone to play. And even compared to like Type 5 or whatever, mouse, etc., I'd rather be playing those tanks than playing this. I think that's just down to the general uncomfortable feeling you get when playing this tank with this size that just doesn't really seem to fit in most positions. And of course, armor wise, yeah, it can side scrape really well, but you have two massive cupolas, so people shouldn't really be missing you, to be honest, too much at all. So it's not like I think this is OP, but the buff that it got today, like right now you're still watching the old one, is -3 seconds to reload, which then again makes it also a bit curious, because now in its buffed state I think it has like half a second more reload than a as a banger shot altogether, and then a 60TP which has 750 alpha. But that also may raise some eyebrows, because like, you know, 60TP 750 alpha, this one 850 alpha, half a second. Doesn't make that much sense. So far, you know, after the first two terrible shots, we seem to have recovered pretty well in this battle. D44 tries to flank us, but you know, he's just a eeny meeny little shit. I'm not even sure what he's spending here. I feel like he's just spending our engine deck, and that was a terrible shot, to be honest. Like, he through the center, just hitting his gun. The shooting here could be a lot better, to be honest, in that regard. But, you know, we cleaned up this side with 60 damage. Of course, it was a tier 8 battle as well. And that's like another note for this tank. Higher alpha means you just plow through those low tiers a little bit harder and a little bit faster as well, and take more of their HP. So for those tanks, the introduction of this is not that amazing either, you know, if you're a tier 8 especially. A tier 9 less so, but still, if you're a tier 8, you know, you're like, you can get shot up to like 1,000. Like, this can easily roll 1,000 damage in a shot. And of course, if you're a lonely armor tank, you're going to be getting clapped for 1,200. So, you know, in that regard, I don't think this tank will be an overperformer, but I think it will be annoying to play against, nonetheless, because of that high alpha. And one mistake, you know, you're going to be losing a large percentile of your HP. So, like I said, overperforming? Probably not. Fun to play against? Probably not. Fun to play? Probably not either. You know, so it's a bit of everything for everybody. You can see the very low shell velocity there. You gotta be golfing on range with this tank to be really getting the shots onto targets, which is both bad and good, of course, you know, because of the shell dipping. In general, you could say it's more bad than good because, you know, trying to snipe with a gun like this on range, good luck. I mean, I'm certain some of you will be able to do it. If not, then it is what it is. You know. But on this battle, you know, we cleaned up the heavy side and now we're just kind of driving through whatever they have left, which is like a low tier shitters, which don't really pose a threat anymore. And with all that, you will be able to get pretty consistent battles in this. And this will generate a lot of big replays as well, like big damage games, simply because of that high alpha. And because of that HE, you're going to get scenarios where somebody pens an HE shell, pens 2 HE shells, and they're already at 2.5k damage. Or, you know, like they get an AMMORACK, they get a fire, and they're already after like a 4k after like 2 minutes. It's all very possible with something like this. So you are going to get big replays out of this. But if you compare it to, for example, a Type 5, I don't think the averages will be quite up there all together in comparison. And, you know, surely I'm a little bit spoiled, of course, because you could say that this is, I don't know if I would use the word balance, but I'd say not overperforming, which also makes it less interesting to play because, you know, for me to be like, oh man, this is a kind of cool tank in the boxes, it would have to be somewhat interesting to play, which I don't find that this vehicle, or really any of the vehicles in the boxes, like that sensation it has tingled. Yeah, we're at 9,168, 1,100 HP left on the enemy team. Put out the SU, 842, 1,000, 10,010. Not a bad battle whatsoever, to be honest. Not bad. So the thing I'd like to focus on more now with this tank is like the question if this is like even like a healthy tank to have in the game yet again. Simply because, like, yeah, tanks like FVs and Jagdpanzers, etc., they have high module damage as well, but they're generally not frontline vehicles. They generally don't tend to play that close to the front line, and you don't get shot by them that often. Now, this is the buffed version. You can see 15.83 seconds reload. That's a very impactful buff to the reload, to be honest, which is also why I didn't want to publish a review of it yesterday, because I feel like it would be unfair to not play the tank in its buffed state and actually get like a clue about how it would perform. But back on the track, is this like a kind of healthy tank to have? Because during this battle on stream, I said as well, we're talking about the module damage. When you find a target that has weak modules, of which a lot of heavy tanks have weak modules by itself, and a lot of medium tanks as well, this tank is going to be playing much closer against those as well and be profiting from that. Like, is that a good thing? I am not that sure altogether about that, because, like, sure, for the person playing the BZT, it's going to be a high dopamine moment, but for the people playing against this tank, it will just, I feel like, become an annoying kind of vehicle where often they will just farm it because the guy misses a shot and you give him like 2-3 shots in the time it takes him to reload, and the weak spots are really not that hard to hit altogether because of those very giant cupolas with a very slow reverse and rotation of the turret. But then again, at other points, it's going to be doing this. Like, you're in the Mivi, you lose 945, you're about 40% down of your HP in one singular shot, right? And if you're even more unlucky, right, and you're not in the Mivi, but you're actually in the BZ, and you have weak modules, he hits you in the engine, he sets you on fire, you burn for an additional 500 HP, you're now down over half your HP in basically one shot, right? So that's already pretty annoying if you're the BZ. However, if you're the 4TDU and you end up getting just one tapped altogether, like, let's be real, you're pissed at that point. And that all comes off the base of this tank just having some incredible module damage altogether, right? It has very high module damage. I think it's something like 240 something, if I have to recall. I'm not sure. Like, you can find this online. It's more than a Jagdpanzer. It's more than an FV. And it will lead to quite a lot of these situations. Because, like I said, there's a lot of these frontline tanks, 4TDU, BZ, VZ, E5, 215B, even Mouses and Tash and Ratas, and have very weakly armored or very low HP modules, like, I don't know, module health, that end up getting set on fire or detonated quite often. And this is what I was talking about. I've said this a few times on stream as well. Purely trading 1-for-1, you are not going to be losing against basically anything. On the tanks you're fighting against on the heavy tank line, you have the highest alpha. You have the biggest wiener in that regard. So, you know, even a Taschenrate at tier 11, you are out trading him. Like, you are going to be winning this engagement as long as you are hitting your shots, right? And some people be like, but what about the Yak Panzers and the FVs? You know, what about traded against them? Haha. That is cherry picking a certain situation that doesn't happen. There's never a situation where you're trading blow for blow with an FV and you're sitting 10 meters away from each other. That just doesn't happen. Yeah, you're technically correct, but you're also technically an idiot, right? Okay. Anyways, I think here I tried to set the mouse on fire, but it doesn't end up happening, sadly. But you can see 8,886 damage already, very quickly, out of this. I mean, the fire and the AMMORACK definitely helped in this regard. I have 15,000 HP left. And, yeah, no, the downside is that, you know, we're caught in a little bit of a crossfire, so can't really peek anything, because I would like to reverse, I would like to side scrape against the Mivi, but then I get shot by the mouse, so kind of stuck at this point. And here we get kind of unlucky that the 50B decides to go behind us. It's kind of unfortunate. Luckily enough, he misses one. You can see how slow the turret takes, or how slow the turret is, and how long it takes to actually turn. I think the Dravets there did not end up eating one shot, but he does kind of play forward, which is good for us to have. The 50B ended up missing one, and I probably have too little HP on this tank. But tanks like 50B and FVs, etc., are very fun to play against, because, you know, when they end up making a bad peak, like many FV players still end up doing, you're going to clap them back for basically the same amount of damage as they're hitting you for if they penetrate the shot. The 50B tries this as well, and he takes 1173 to the face, giving us 10,059 damage just like that. Was this a very hard battle? No. Is this going to happen for a lot of people? Probably yes, because of the high alpha combined with the module damage, combined with the high explosive. That's pretty nasty. So, you know, play this game, play this tank, I don't know how many battles now, but like I said, I don't think I've AMMORACKed ever as many tanks as I have with this one so far. And, you know, that comes from the positions you play, the tanks you play against as well, and of course, you know, just the general module damage as it is. There's not much more in this battle, as they just started kind of dying off. I mean, the tier 3 is the only one with a little bit of HP. But it's not guaranteed we get to him anyways. So in this scenario, right, in this kind of battle where you do get to trade 1-for-1, you get module damage as well kicking in. Yeah, I mean, it works, right? But I feel like there's going to be a lot of games where you play this tank, you're just driving, it's uncomfortable, you're very slow, you're very big, you're sticking out, and you know, because of that, this is like a one-trick kind of pony that will do really well in certain situations and just really, really bad in very many others, to be Dravets there kind of ruining the gorilla for no reason. We don't get a shot on the tier 3 though, so it's going to end at 10.3. But, you know, it was a good showcase of 1-for-1 trades, right? So, again, a city map, because there's no point to really show you the matches that don't work, because just imagine anything that's like remotely open where you cannot trade, that's where this tank doesn't really work. Unbelievable. On these smaller, shorter, and like less big maps, yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, it's going to work, it's going to put out good numbers, and you're probably going to end up enjoying playing it as well, if I had to guess. It kind of depends from person to person. But for me, still, the general trend of this vehicle was found it kind of resident sleeper, not very dynamic, too slow, too big, and like, sure, you know, like there's some high dopamine moments from AMMORACKs, fires, etc. Because like I said, I haven't AMMORACKed anything just as much as with this. But I don't think this would be a vehicle that I would end up playing a lot personally. Then again, when I look back towards the ROM Falta boxes, which all had the first tier 10s in it, right, from loot boxes, I wouldn't end up playing those. One, I don't have them because I didn't accept any loot boxes. Second of all, even when I play them on the press account, I don't really enjoy those tanks either. Like, neither the Chieftain or the MBTB. The MBT is very boring in my opinion because it has this broken clip potential, but like you spend the entire game reloading. The stack's about to get a rude awakening, you know, big damage, like, you know, big dopamine moment. And I mean, that shot, it just like, I don't like high alpha HE like this, you know. It just reminds me too much about the FV. And if I don't like the FV, I cannot really like be like, oh man, 1200 alpha on a heavy tank with 90 millimeters of pen, which is a lot, is very good, by the way. I mean, the T49, I think, also came to a rough awakening. You know, now I really am an heavy. So I don't know. Not a fan of that. You know, 3k damage basically in 1 minute and 30 seconds. So, you know, taking that into consideration, the word of the sentence of this video will be taking this into consideration, right? But like, you know, not a fan of that because the lightly armored tanks already suffer enough, to be honest. They don't need to suffer even more. The 777 had it coming though. You know, he had it coming. He had it coming. He deserves it. So, you know, like, just to show you, this is not like a isolated instance, yeah? This was something that happened numerous times throughout the time that I was playing this tank. Okay? Lowly armored modules, such like the 777, you know, engines. This tank will continuously set those on fire. And that's maybe serves as a warning to all of you watching this, that when you meet this vehicle, you have to be careful. Because you don't want to end up like the T49, the Tsak, or the 777. I think that makes a lot of sense what I'm trying to say here. Yeah? Just so you're aware, just because like I think when you see a heavy tank, you don't assume that it has higher module damage than a Yak Panzer. At least if I was to see this tank driving out in a battle, I wouldn't assume that like I'm more likely for this tank to AMMORACK me than a Yak Panzer. I feel like a lot of people will find themselves agreeing with this statement because you're not used to it, but it's like an 18 centimeter yeah, it's 18 centimeters, right? I wish I had 18 centimeters, but you know, about half of that is also pretty cool, right? No, but it's just like really important to keep it into account that when you end up playing against this vehicle and you are in a tank that is well known for lower modules, which again, a lot of heavies and mediums are that, expect to be critical hit somewhere every single shot. You know, basically every single shot. So there's definitely going to be some highlight reels coming out of this tank simply because of the module damage, right? Because of that, it's going to end up generating some really big battles, like I said. Like, it's guaranteed for that to happen. It's just the way this tank works, you know. And maybe that's the selling point of it, although we'll get to that in a second again. Of this vehicle is the like high module damage, because haha, funny high dopamine moment, you know. I don't know. You know, it's a very chill and easy 7.3k damage. We haven't really had to do too much for it, to be honest. Between you and me, we're almost dying though to this PTA, which was a little scary, and we're lucky that the M53 actually missed us as well. But did we do anything like truly amazing in this battle? Something stand out, something I would write my mother about? Probably not. It's just more of a showcase of what this tank will end up doing in a lot of battles, you know? Which is AMMORACK tanks, set tanks on fire. Just generally be kind of annoying. You know, like I said, I don't think this will be the highest performing tank. I just think it will be an annoying tank. Like, annoying to play against. Because the bad peak is like minus a large percentage of your HP or minus your entire HP if you're unlucky. If you're the T49, for example. So, you know, quick 8.1 on Himmels, which is of course a very good map for it as well, because the engagements are very close. The distances to cross are very close, so all of that playing into the favor of this kind of vehicle. Yeah. I think that is a takeaway from this altogether. As always, gamers, thank you very much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys on the very next one. Peace.